developed by Guerrilla Games and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment in 2017, Horizon Zero Dawn received large amounts of critical acclaim and was nominated for many of that year's Game Awards. Unfortunately, it came out the same week as
The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild.
a lesson Guerrilla Games and Sony definitely took to heart for its sequel, Horizon Forbidden West. Despite their unfortunate choice of release windows, Horizon Zero Dawn amassed a passionate fan base, has sold over 20 million copies to date, and the series has become one of Sony's tentpole franchises, up there with the likes of Uncharted, God of War, and Ape Escape. While Horizon Zero Dawn is praised for its gorgeous visuals, high concept of a post-apocalypse populated by robot dinosaurs, and action-packed gameplay, many have cited its story as its strongest aspect, so I, in desperate need of an excuse to avoid my two children, decided to see what all the fuss was about, and put it down 4 hours later with zero intention of ever picking it back up. That was until I needed a subject for my next video and decided to give Horizon Zero Dawn a second chance. Now, sometimes a funny thing happens. You play a game that, for whatever reason, isn't exactly to your taste. So you put it down and move on. Then, sometime later, you pick it back up, and with an ear more tuned to the particular beat that it marches to, are able to appreciate it more on its own terms. That was certainly the case for me with The Witcher 3, Breath of the Wild, Control, games I initially bounced off hard at first, only to come back and enjoy immensely, which wouldn't have happened had I not given them a second chance. Could the same be said for Horizon Zero Dawn? Would I realize that the fault lied with me, open my heart to this scrappy little critical and commercial darling, and appreciate it for the masterpiece it really— No, I stopped playing again after 4 hours. I might have gotten a bit further this time, but I definitely called it quits after the first major boss fight, and I am not going to play this game again. That's right, I did not finish Horizon Zero Dawn. So if you were expecting me to give this game the full dinner service, soup to nuts, then I'm sorry, but this ain't that video. For a lot of you, the fact that I didn't beat the game is grounds enough to dismiss everything I have to say beyond this point, and if you're one of those people, thanks for clicking on this video. You can leave a thumbs down and or a hateful comment on the way out. But for everyone else who wants to stick around, allow me to explain just why it is that I've bounced off this beloved game twice over now, which can be perfectly summed up with one word: Aloy. That's not exactly fair. I don't have a problem with the entire main protagonist, just certain aspects of her. Okay, so 2 words then: Aloy and needs. That's not all that clear either. You know what? Let's just make it a question then. What does Aloy need, and why does that hold me back from enjoying the rest of the game? Shit, that's 2 questions.
Gabby J!
Yay!
Oh, and spoilers for Horizon Zero Dawn. Let's get started. To get right into it, Aloy is only half a character. When you strip a protagonist down to the studs, they are made up of 2 things: wants and needs. Wants are what the character consciously desires, the goal they work to achieve, which drives the story forward. Needs are what's missing from the character's life or inner self that prevents them from being their best self, stereotypically expressed out loud by a second character who says, "Oops. You know what your problem is?" These 2 sides of the character coin, wants and needs, work together to drive the story forward and give the story meaning. We come for the want, we stay for the need. Generally, after the main character realizes what they need, they change their behavior and transform into their best self, which finally allows them to achieve what they want, and the story can end. If you want to watch a great example of what I'm talking about, watch Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. It's basically Wants and Needs the movie, and it's just awesome. You gotta see it.
The legend will never die!
Anyone who's played Horizon Zero Dawn knows that Aloy has a very strong want, which is to learn who her mother was and why she abandoned Aloy at birth. But does Aloy have an equally strong need? We open the game with Rost, unnamed infant in arm. He places a necklace that belonged to his daughter around her neck, and the 2 travel across the robot dinosaur-strewn landscape for her naming ritual. And yes, if you haven't played this game, it has Dinobots. It's pretty much its defining feature. Rost is greeted by High Matriarch Tirsa.
No, off your knees. It's nearly time. And yes, you may speak to me.
You came to bless the naming.
Have not 6 months gone by since we entrusted her to you?
But we are outcasts.
You by choice, and she, well... I am a high matriarch, Rost. I bless whom I choose.
Then you honor us.
Yes, yes, now go, and be ready to declare. Go!
Rost names the child
Aloy!
and so the name is blessed, though another matriarch, Lansra,
That's the worst name I ever heard.
arrives and accuses Aloy of being a curse, demanding to know if Tirsa has told Rost anything of the nature of her birth. While the two matriarchs bicker, Rost assures Aloy that
I'm here. And wherever you go, I will follow.
cue title card and main menu options. Alright, so there's a common phrase in writing,
I feel like, we should start our stories where they begin, not start them where they get interested.
Get out.
which sounds obvious until you consider what that actually means. Start as closely as possible to the moment when the story gains significance for the protagonist. But is the naming ritual this moment? In How to Write a Scene by John August, one of the steps a writer should ask themselves is, what would happen if this scene got omitted? Imagine the editor messed up and accidentally left out this scene. Would the story still make sense? If the answer is yes, then you don't really need the scene and shouldn't bother writing it. But it's so dramatic, you say, but it's so funny. Tough. Put that drama or that comedy into scenes that are crucial to the story. So we don't have to imagine what would happen if the naming ritual was cut, because the game already does it for us. The opening sequence with Rost and Aloy, as absolutely no one should ever call her, only plays if you don't have an existing save on file. Otherwise, it leads directly into the main menu options. So the definitive answer to what would happen if this scene got omitted is the rest of the game just starts, doesn't it? So it probably should have been cut. You could argue that this sequence establishes the setting, a bit of the politics that will come into play later, and how much Rost cares for Aloy. But, like John August said, is there a way the writers could have conveyed all this information, departed daughter, love of adopted child, good and bad witch, Dinobots, while opening with a sequence where Aloy, not Rost, drives the action? Because right now, in this sequence, all Aloy is chiefly concerned with are babas, nappies, and boom booms. Let's compare this to Assassin's Creed 2, which, heads up, I'm gonna do throughout the whole video. Not just because it's the grandpappy of the open world objective-based genre as we know it, not just because they're both stories about how the past affects the present, not just because one stars Kristen Bell and the other stars her childhood look-alike. Man, do you remember when Kristen Bell was in Assassin's Creed 2? Kristen Bell! This Kristen Bell.
Sure, let's not have brunch. Like animals.
America's sweetheart, Kristen Bell, was in an Assassin's Creed video game where this happens.
It is done.
And I feel like we've all collectively forgotten about it. But also, because I think Assassin's Creed 2 does an excellent job of establishing its main protagonist, Ezio Auditore da Firenze. That's even fun to say, even though I'm sure I mangled it. So excellent, in fact, I'd argue he's the contributing factor to how Assassin's Creed became such a massive franchise. Assassin's Creed 2 also opens with a baby. Sort of. It actually opens on action in the present day, in an escape sequence centered on dual protagonist Desmond Miles, but once he escapes and gets into the Animus machine to experience the life of his ancestor in Renaissance Italy, we then cut to the literal birth of Ezio Auditore. So is this where Ezio's story gains significance? No, of course not. Could this scene be cut with nothing lost? Yes, but it is where Desmond's story gains significance because again, he's reliving Ezio's life in order to matrix himself into a master assassin ASAP. Returning to Horizon Zero Dawn, after the naming ceremony, we flash forward 6 years later with a group of children picking berries for an affectionate caretaker. Aloy, now 6 years old, clearly wants a mother figure in her life, as well as some companionship and tries to join in on the berry picking. The woman quickly herds the children away, calling Aloy an outcast to be shunned. This upsets Aloy, who runs away crying and stumbles into a cave that houses a long-dead outpost with futuristic technology, including a focus that Aloy takes off a corpse, which allows her to interact with digital locks, audio logs, and see a holograph of a father telling his absent child happy birthday. As we watch Aloy interact with the holograph, we get a clear sense of what Aloy wants: a family. There's nothing inherently wrong with kickstarting your story off through coincidence, with Aloy falling down a random cave and finding a focus. Many stories do this, and that's fine. Consider it the universe conspiring against the protagonist to start their journey, because after all, Aloy is the center of this story's universe. The universe creates a situation in response to the protagonist's inner need. They can no longer live in an undivided state. Their own self pulls them onto a path which will force them into a process of transformation. However, while we've gotten a very clear sense of what Aloy wants, a family, we've yet to get any indication of what she needs, a character flaw she must overcome to become her better self. Instead, as Aloy looks for a way out of the caves, she discovers body after body of the long departed, many with audio logs that hint that they were in some sort of a voluntary lockdown, possibly as a science experiment, possibly for their own good. What happened here? Why were they trapped? And why do they have such advanced technology while Aloy and Rost live off the land populated with Dinobots? You'll notice that very little of this has to do with Aloy herself, but rather the history of the world. In a word, lore. We'll circle our wagon back here soon. Aloy is eventually rescued by Rost, who tells her that such places are forbidden, that they are of the metal world, then notices the focus on Aloy's ear. He tries to take it away from her, telling her such things are dangerous, but she refuses to hand it over. So Rost, against his character, lets her keep it, but also decides it's time to train Aloy to take care of herself if she's going to be running off alone. Let's stay on Rost for a moment and go over establishing the rules of a story and what breaking them does. Rost is an outcast of the Nora tribe, someone to be shunned, but he chose this life.
But we are outcasts.
You by choice.
Rost chose this life and adheres to the customs and beliefs of the tribe. However, right away, Matriarch Tirsa allows him to speak and, despite being outcasts, is kind to them. I know there's an in-story explanation for her warm welcome. She thinks Aloy is a blessing, not a curse, and she just plain likes Rost. But think about what this communicates to the player. Outcasts are to be shunned, except when they're not. We're told one thing, then immediately shown another. When you establish a rule in your story,
no one goes beyond the reef.
It's a good idea to hold fast to that rule until a significant moment, like when the protagonist needs to make a choice, and breaking from the rules underscores how important that choice is. But the outcasts are not to be spoken to rule is broken in the first dialogue exchange between two characters in the game.
And yes, you may speak to me.
Unless you have an existing save on file and this scene's skipped over entirely, of course. Then, when Rost rescues Aloy from a forbidden place with a taboo artifact on her ear, everything the story has communicated about Rost up to this point implies that not only would he not allow a 6-year-old to keep this item, but that he should not, according to his religious beliefs. I don't know if you've been around a lot of religious people, but I grew up in the Midwest, and they kind of take that stuff seriously. An easy counter to this, of course, is that Rost has a blind spot for Aloy because he cares for her. And I get that. But again, think about how this immediately weakens the rules of the story. If you call a place forbidden to a tribe of people who shun technology because they believe it destroyed the old world, then allow a 6-year-old to keep a clearly forbidden device simply because she be acting like a 6-year-old, whether Rost cares for her or not, it's communicating that these beliefs aren't all that strong to begin with and can be ignored when convenient. Cut to the next day, where Aloy is in full focus mode. Rost, visibly frustrated like all parents who let their kids zone out with electronic devices, hands Aloy her bow. I think this is also how Aloy learns to read or something, I don't know, why else include this beat?
Bow?
What follows is an extended tutorial where Rost teaches Aloy how to make medicine, engage in stealth, create distractions, and locate weak points on enemies. While doing so, they see Teb, a member of the Nora tribe, free running across the landscape, who notices them watching and smiles back.
Ignore him. We are outcasts, and he is of the tribe.
Maybe he doesn't like the tribe.
And he is a fool.
Later, Aloy and Rost are drawn by Teb's cries for help, who's lost his footing and fell into a herd of machines.
I can do nothing. It's only a matter of time before the machines find that boy and kick him to death.
However, Aloy's focus allows her to see the path the Dinobots will take, and is determined to help, despite Rost's insistence she stay put. Aloy moves into action. Rost tries to stop her, but only manages to grab her bow as she wriggles away. Aloy, now defenseless in the middle of a herd, has no choice but to move forward and save Teb. I'll admit it's not a bad bit of storytelling. It serves as the culmination of the tutorial, but also demonstrates what sets Aloy apart from everyone else. Her determination and her focus. The thing on her ear, I don't mean like her actual ability to focus. She won't have one much longer if she keeps up with this. After Aloy rescues Teb, gaining the respect of Rost, Teb's father storms in and demands that Teb
seal your lips. They are outcasts both, and she is motherless.
He even whacks Teb across the back of the head for good measure. Rost sides with the father, saying,
That boy should not have spoken to us. It's against tribal law.
Aloy, upset, storms off back towards camp. On the way, she's hit with a rock by this smarmy little prick because she's, an outcast. Tears of pain turn to tears of anger, and Aloy demands Rost tell her who her mother is.
Who was my mother?
Aloy, I've told you before, that's not for us to know. You were just a newborn when the matriarchs brought you to me.
So the matriarchs, they know?
Rost says it's not that simple, but Aloy keeps at him until Rost finally admits
The proving. The tribe's rite of passage held every year. Those who pass become braves. But to the one who wins, the matriarchs grant a boon.
A boon?
Yes, whatever the winner wants.
Then I'll do it.
Aloy then trains for 12 years for the proving with an honest-to-God montage.
We're gonna need a montage. It takes a montage.
Not gonna lie, I laughed out loud at this montage because it just felt like misguided. Montages like this, the good ones anyway, are never really about physical training. They're about character development.
The training is nothing. The will is everything.
If we use the most famous examples of training montages, which is of course the Rocky movies, they're triumphant celebrations that immediately come after Rocky finally realizes his need. Whether it's overcoming self-doubt, putting family first, returning to his roots, defeating all of communism, whatever it is, Rocky is now ready for the final battle ahead, physically because of his training, but also mentally and spiritually because of achieving his need. If a montage comes earlier in a work, then it usually establishes the character's need rather than achieves it. Horizon Zero Dawn's montage, however, is primarily about physical training and nothing else. Is it a cool cutscene? Absolutely. Watch, you can. But does this cutscene actually mean anything beyond the surface level of watching Aloy get good? Not at all. It was here, right here, in this montage, that I began to lose faith in Horizon Zero Dawn's ability to tell a meaningful story about Aloy's personal growth and felt myself begin to check out. The call to adventure is not random, but rather it is tethered to, even inspired by, the very state of disunity the protagonist finds themselves in at the beginning of the story. They need to change, and that need is now ready to emerge from the depths of the protagonist's unconscious nature. Aloy has heard the call to adventure, and she's accepted the charges. But that call is firmly tied to her want, with her need nowhere to be seen inside the phone booth. I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop with that metaphor. Also, this montage establishes Aloy as the baddest motherfucker in Dinobot Park. Then I get my hands on the controls and... I'm not going to use the big no-no phrase,
Ludonarrative dissonance.
because this isn't really ludonarrative dissonance, but I am going to point out that setting up the character as the baddest in the land before I've had time to even fully grasp the controls is, well, it kind of undercuts the montage, doesn't it? I made the mistake of using that phrase during my interview with Rocksteady, and both of the guys interviewing me were like, whoa, we don't use that phrase here. Although they were both British, so it sounded more like, whoa, we don't use that phrase here. No, they didn't sound like that at all. Don't get me wrong, most video games place a fully formed apex predator into a new player's hands and then just tell them,
Go!
What are the rules?
But Horizon Zero Dawn's unique approach of watching Aloy go from a child to a post-apocalypse ninja warrior lands a bit differently. Assassin's Creed 2 also has a training montage, which also comes after Ezio's call to adventure, but let's just stick with Horizon Zero Dawn for right now. Aloy, now an adult, searches for Ross 2 days before the Proving, the thing she's trained 12 long years for. Ross tells Aloy that he still has one last lesson to teach. She must gather supplies to make fire arrows and meet him by the gate to leave the area. The player is then given full control of adult Aloy in a relatively safe space called the Embrace. Free to explore, hunt, craft, and bother the locals. The fire arrows are very easy to craft, so you could get back to Ross in about 10 minutes if you wanted, but then you'd miss out on a lot of optional content, such as help a woman find her missing brother, help an injured man rescue his daughter and retrieve a spear that belonged to her recently deceased mom, and gather rabbits for Odd Grata, a fellow outcast who refuses to speak to a frustrated Aloy directly, but communicates her gratitude indirectly, which Aloy finally realizes when saying goodbye for maybe the last time, all while holding her arms out like some sort of Barbie doll. There's also Karst, a local merchant who will trade with Aloy despite her being an outcast.
Aloy, that man breaks the law every time he speaks to you.
Reason being, he too was an outcast once and prefers her company to the rest of the tribe. You can also revisit the cave Aloy fell into as a child where she first found the focus, now capable of accessing new areas and crap. Working my way through the Embrace, I must admit that Aloy is a lot of fun to control. She runs good, she jumps good, she climbs good, she shoots good, she slides good. Good. I still don't think I got on Montage Aloy's level, but setting up traps for enemies to take them down easily that just a half hour ago would give me a hard time feels satisfying. And as the game goes on, the Dinobots only get bigger and presumably more satisfying to take down. All that said, there's a lot in this chapter that bothers me, and it comes back to those pesky rules the story's established. Aloy is an outcast, which means no one should be able to talk to her, which is the case if you approach one of the two settlements in the Embrace. They'll treat her like Odd Grata, saying out loud what they can't directly say to Aloy.
I wish the outcast would go bother someone else.
Why do some people find it so hard to heed the matriarch's wisdom? Just don't look and she'll go away.
So, like, should those words encounter her ears, then it's her own fault. However, two of the side quests you can take come from Nora tribespeople, the ones about the missing brother and daughter in trouble. Lip service is paid to the fact Aloy is an outcast, but then quickly brushed aside to get to the quest.
I have nothing against outcasts, far from it. But I shouldn't talk to you, I don't want to get in trouble.
I don't see anyone else around to help. You want to talk to an outcast?
I'm desperate for help, whatever the consequences.
Again, like Ross being allowed to speak to Good Witch Tirsa, this weakens the outcast label on Aloy in service of getting a few quests in. Two of the people you encounter were previously outcasts themselves. The missing brother, whose punishment just ended, and the merchant Karst, who was exiled for 5 years for searching around ancient ruins like the cave Aloy found the focus in and Ross let her keep. Do you see what I'm getting at here? The game keeps going back on itself, establishing rules but then breaking them when convenient. Being an outcast is bad, but it's only temporary. Exploring ancient ruins is a punishable offense, but Aloy can keep the focus. You should never talk to an outcast, but gosh darn it, Aloy is just so helpful and friendly.
I don't see anyone else around to help.
Especially for someone who grew up with close to zero social engagement and has this guy for a dad.
Follow.
I'm sure someone can defend this by saying, well, the game is trying to show how misguided and unfair their belief system is.
Seal your lips!
Yeah, that's exactly what the game's doing. The writers wanted to make things as hard on Aloy as possible in order to spark her desire.
Who was my mother?
At the beginning of a story, we're usually shown what's called a day in the life, or the normal world of the main protagonist. This shows us what their life looks like before the inciting incident turns it all upside down. Uncharted 4 even combines those two phrases into the chapter A Normal Life, which establishes main protagonist Nathan Drake's want and need at the same time.
Ah! What? Where are you?
Uncharted 4 is brilliant. Outcast at birth, treated unfairly by bigot boys big and small, child Aloy's day in the life is, well, it's kind of miserable, isn't it? However, this does spark Aloy's desire, or what the hero wants in the story.
Why am I an outcast? Who was my mother?
Aloy.
Tell me!
A clearly defined desire creates the spine of the story and allows the audience to follow along more easily with everything that's to come. At any time, the audience can check in with this desire. Has Aloy found her mom yet? No? Well, then the story's not over. The very last shot of the game is Aloy finding her mom. Desire met, story over. What all this boils down to is that the writers wanted to ensure that Aloy's life was unfair to spark her desire, but the game can't be unfair to the player. Therefore, there must be NPCs with quests to adhere to traditional open-world objective-based design.
I don't see anyone else around to help.
However, you can't make all the NPCs outcasts like Oddgrata, because that would make the player wonder what kind of society forces out and ignores that many people. I mean, where is she? America? So, some of the NPCs have to be tribes members, even if that weakens the rules like a Dinobot caught in a tripcaster. So the story and game are at odds with each other. Though I'm not sure that had to be the case. Remember, a story doesn't just leap out of someone's head fully formed. There's a long, excruciating path paved with choices to get to the finished product. The narrative director, John Gonzalez, talked about how the high concept of dinosaur robot jungle was already decided on before he came on board. It was his job to figure out how this world came to be, who the player would control and what their motivation would be, and for what it is, they did a decent enough job. After all, it couldn't have been easy to be handed a cocktail napkin with dinosaurs but robots hastily scribbled onto it and then have to figure out an entire world around that. But Gonzalez and crew left out one crucial aspect to Aloy's character, the one that gives the story meaning. Aloy does not have a clearly defined need. She feels as single-minded and robotic as these guys. And it should also be stated that designing a narrative for video games is notoriously hard, due to the writers undeservedly taking a backseat to almost every other aspect of game development. It's entirely possible that Gonzalez meant to develop Aloy's character in all the ways I'm describing, but was unable to because, like, entire segments of the game had to be spontaneously cut in order to reach a deadline, and stuff had to be shoved into dialogue trees. So, while I don't intend to be overly harsh towards Gonzalez, his team, and their work, in the end, I can only go off of the finished product. Fire arrows in hand, Aloy rejoins Rost for her final lesson. They approach the Gate of the Embrace, which is closed and guarded by Nora tribesmen. Aloy is worried because she doesn't think they'll let them pass, but Rost...
Opening a gate for an outcast?
Some who are shunned reaped honor before disgrace.
Just past the gates, it's clear something went on a rampage. They follow the path of destruction to a Sawtooth, the largest Dinobot Aloy has yet encountered. Ross says Aloy's final test is to take it down alone. Unfortunately, my footage of my Sawtooth fight was corrupted in the transfer to my laptop, so, let's just say I won't show it for, the sake of spoilers. That fight was just too hot for YouTube. Actually, the fight wasn't all that hot. I set a few traps, I lured it into him, I did a couple critical melee strikes, and boom, fight was over. I've played a lot of Monster Hunter. It's gonna take more than a Sawtooth to intimidate me. My mom says I'm cool. Afterwards, Ross asks Aloy why he brought her here.
Not to answer questions.
Aloy.
Survival requires perfection. It was a test to hone my skills against a dangerous new machine.
No. Follow.
Rost then finally expresses Aloy's need out loud.
For years, you've trained to win the proving, but only for yourself. As a brave, it will be your duty to fight for your tribe.
My tribe?
The strength to stand alone, Aloy, is the strength to make a stand. To serve a purpose greater than yourself. That is the lesson you must learn.
But I'm over here like, bruh, do you know what I've been up to the last couple hours? I got rabbits for Odd Grata. I tracked down a missing brother. I rescued a daughter and got her mother's spear back for her. Don't you remember Teb? Teb? Aloy could practically mint her own department store slogan, helping the community since 6 years old. Aloy's need, as expressed by Rost, it's not a real need, because it isn't supported by the surrounding gameplay. Once again, the story and the game are at odds with each other. It's not ludonarrative dissonance, it's just they're not working together. The player, by the very nature of an objective-based open-world game design, will be helpful to anyone and everyone that comes with a quest marker. Aloy does not need to learn how to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. She's already done so, will continue to do so as long as she remains controlled by player one. Beer number 2. This one's a stout. And for the record, Mooncat pours her beers correctly. The next day, Rost accompanies Aloy to Mother's Heart, where the proving will take place, but also makes this his final goodbye to Aloy.
See you back home in a few days?
You will not find me there, Aloy. Take this. Remember.
Why are you talking like we'll never see each other again?
After the proving, Aloy will become a member of the Nora tribe, which means according to tribal law, she can no longer speak to Rost, the person who raised her since birth. Now, we know that's not a hard fact because...
You want to talk to an outcast?
I'm desperate for help. Well, well, well. An outcast on my doorstep. All mother protect me.
I have nothing against outcasts. Far from it. But I shouldn't talk to you. I don't want to get in trouble.
I don't see anyone else around to help.
But Rost is so devoted to his beliefs that he would never, ever speak.
You may speak to me.
You came to bless the name?
Sorry, he's so devoted to his beliefs that he would never, ever...
Aloy, that man breaks the law every time he speaks to you.
I want to buy a tripcaster, and no other trader will sell to outcasts.
Stock it with ammunition, then.
So devoted that...
Some who are shunned reaped honor before disgrace.
And this is how all the built-up little moments of the story undermining itself start to spill over. I know I'm supposed to feel something as Aloy pleads for some way to keep in touch with her father figure, because this is supposed to be a point of no return for the relationship. But I just don't buy it, because the game has gone back on its own rules again and again, that when Ross says that this is goodbye for real, I'm over here like...
All right. Well, see you later.
And skipping ahead, that's exactly the case after Aloy wins the proving, besting the now-grown weenie boy who hit her with a rock.
This is boring. Time for Boss to get some sleep.
Still a smarmy little prick, that one. And Vala, who treats Aloy like an equal, not an outcast. Don't get used to either of them, because they both immediately die afterwards in a surprise ambush by a mysterious group of masked figures, who are specifically there to find and kill Aloy for reasons that won't become known until much later in the story. Aloy, being the baddest motherfucker in the land, fights back heroically, only proving my point that she doesn't have a real need because there she is, taking a stand for others, but then gets caught by an even badder motherfucker named Hellas, only to be saved at the last moment by Rost. So, like the montage before it, I laughed out loud at this moment, which I'm sure wasn't the writer's intention. But how could I help myself? Didn't Ross say, like, 30 minutes ago that Aloy'd never see him again? Why should we ever believe anything that Rost ever has to say? Think about how many times Rost has gone back on his word or broken tribal law before this moment. Being allowed to speak to Matriarch Tirsa, letting Aloy keep the focus, disapproving that Aloy speaks to Karst, but then saying, she might as well if she can get a tripcaster out of it. Passing through the gates with a whistle. Rost, a character defined by his beliefs in moral code, absolutely cannot be taken at his word, and so for me, this moment falls completely flat. I mean, it's hilarious. I know the naming ritual way back at the beginning actually foreshadows this return when Rost tells Aloy,
"And wherever you go, I will follow."
And of course, it makes logical sense that Rost would watch Aloy from afar because he loves and raised her. He's not just gonna walk away forever, and I get that, but imagine instead that this moment when Aloy needs Rost the most is the first moment that Rost breaks his word and not the umpteenth. No speaking to the matriarch, no letting Aloy keep her focus. She can even figure out on her own how to get it back from Rost without him knowing, and then use it to save Teb, and then Rost can be like, oh, well, I guess this thing actually has some use. I'll let you keep it now. That would give Aloy agency. No allowing her to speak to Karst. She can do it anyway, but he shouldn't give in and just be like, yeah, well, get that tripcaster, girl. No passing through gates by communicating without communicating to the Nora tribe. If the game not only told us, but showed us that Rost was genuinely someone whose word is unbreakable, we would then believe him when he says that it's goodbye once and for all. Then when he rescues Aloy out of the blue, it could be more surprising and frankly a lot less funny. And then Rost dies in an explosion. Aloy wakes up in the Sacred Mountain, which only matriarchs are allowed to enter. Matriarch Tirsa is there, who finally clues Aloy into the nature of her birth. She was found alone in the Great Chamber with no possible explanation of how she ever got there. She is really and truly motherless, though Matriarch Tirsa believes that she's actually a blessing from the All-Mother herself, which is what they call the robot hanging from the ceiling, and a giant door that scans Aloy upon approaching it and reads she's a 99% genetic match to someone.
Are you my mother?
Though there's a corruption in the door's code and it remains closed.
Error. Alpha registry corrupted. Identity cannot be confirmed. Entry denied.
No.
Aloy believes that it's possible her mother is just beyond that door. So first, Aloy must cleanse the corruption. Somehow. It's all very unclear, which, isn't great. Outside, Matriarch Lansra's still being a bee, but the two other matriarchs name Aloy a Seeker, which allows her to go anywhere she wants with complete authority to do whatever is needed to cleanse this corruption, figure out why they were assaulted by the masked tribe, and jump on all the heads she wants. Aloy is no longer an outcast, still separate from the tribe as she's going to travel far and wide, but now also above the common tribesmen, which really didn't sit well with me. Why make Aloy's life initially so hard, only to go back on that and make her a person of prestige within the tribe practically immediately? Did Aloy earn their respect? I mean, of course she did. Look at her go. And while it's true she hasn't earned everyone's respect...
You, a Seeker? Have Tirsa and Jezza gone insane?
Part of me wonders if it had made more sense that Aloy was blamed for the attack and cast out of the tribe once again, only to come back as their protector much later in the game, whether they accept her or not. That sounds more in line with the final lesson that Rost wanted her to learn, rather than being named a Seeker and acting on the tribe's behalf by default. Instead, this feels similar to a Bethesda game, where you wander into a town of nobody and then several hours later confidently stride out with your name on everyone's lips and you're the apple of everyone's eye. That's fine for a game like Skyrim with a paper-thin plot of "Go forth, Dragonborn, and slay the undead dragon." But it's kind of odd for a game that wants to convey an actual story with actual characters with an actual meaning. Then the stakes are raised when a new machine attacks, capable of infecting once docile Dinobots with a derangement that makes them join in on the attack. Aloy beats them all in a pretty tedious boss fight that doesn't really let you use any of your tricks that you've learned up to this point. Or maybe I just suck, I don't know. Gets some new doodad that lets her do something, I don't know, I didn't try it out. And begins her journey proper. But to be perfectly honest, by this point I have reached Horizon Zero Interest. And I no longer want to play, and so I turn the game off. What's the ABV on this thing? Back when I said Aloy's lack of need is the sole reason I can't stay invested in Horizon Zero Dawn, that's not exactly true. While I honestly think Aloy's half a character in possession of a strong desire that she'll pursue to the ends of the earth itself and not much else, I left out the part that this was by design. You see, the other half of Aloy's character is the world of Horizon Zero Dawn itself. Believe it or not, there's a lot I left out of this recap, like other tribes trying to make peace with the Nora, this shady fellow with a focus, a reunion with Teb who gifts you a new outfit which then smarmy little prick boy makes fun of, this guy who just hates Aloy but becomes the leader of the war tribe because everyone else is dead, and thirsty mutton chop man.
I mean, you're smart. You're obviously capable, and, well, I mean, look at you.
What are you talking about?
Who really should just get a drink of water. Learning how the world of Horizon Zero Dawn came to be, or in other words, uncovering lore, is supposed to be a large part of the player's motivation to move forward. Now, I know this side of the character coin, the backstory lore side, where Aloy learns she's a clone of a long-dead scientist, Elizabeth Sobek, who's responsible for Project Zero Dawn, a plan to revitalize the Earth after a group of self-replicating, biomass-fueled combat robots went rogue and were well on their way towards exterminating all life on the planet, all while sacrificing herself in the process to ensure the project is a success, and securing the future of humanity was a lot of people's favorite part of the game. One of my favorite YouTubers, Noah Caldwell-Gervais, also said this was his favorite part of the game, learning the history. I love Noah. Love that guy. You know what I don't love? Lore. I enjoy VIII Vidya as much as the next person, but I prefer my stories in the present tense, especially if a story's backstory threatens to supersede the story itself. Assassin's Creed 2 also has more than its fair share of lore. You can find out the history of every significant building, every significant person, but all of that is not critical to enjoying the story of Ezio, his family, and his enemies. Horizon Zero Dawn is not the journey of Aloy transforming into her best self, because the reality is she already achieved best self status way back in the training montage. Aloy simply ceases to grow as a character beyond that montage, and instead takes a backseat to watching historical events from 1,000 years ago unfold through holograms and audio logs that just doesn't interest me. I want to watch Aloy's story, not Elizabeth. And, you know, unfortunately, Aloy's story isn't that interesting because Aloy is not that interesting. And that's partly because Horizon Zero Dawn is not a character-driven story. It's a mystery-driven story. Let's consider the opening scene alone, the one with Aloy and her naming ritual. Let's just count the number of questions that arise out of this 5-minute cutscene. What happened to Rost's daughter? Why are Rost and Aloy outcasts? Why is Rost an outcast by choice, but Aloy by birth? Why is Matriarch Teersa nice to the outcasts, but Matriarch Lansra be so ratchet? What is the nature of Aloy's birth that got Matriarch Lansra so ratchet? What's with the Dinobots? If there's advanced technology in this world, then why are the humans so primitive? Who are the faithless old ones? How did they turn their backs on the All-Mother? And what caused their doom? Is this our world? All that in a cutscene that can be skipped altogether if you have a previously saved game. The mysteries only pile up from there, one after another, higher and higher. All of them with canonical answers, but almost none of them directly tied to Aloy or her journey of personal growth, because again, she doesn't have one. This is not Aloy's story, but her ancestor, Elizabeth Sobeck's, who's already been dead for 1,000 years. The most meaningful growth that Aloy experiences in the game is through her XP progression bar and what number her character level's at. All these reasons are why, despite liking how it feels to play Horizon Zero Dawn, I don't like how it feels to watch it. And so I turned it off for the second and most likely final time. So finally, let's quickly go back to Assassin's Creed II to examine how that game establishes its main protagonist, Ezio Auditore da Firenze. We rejoin Ezio as he leads a group of men into a street brawl against his rival, VIII de Pazzi, who's been slandering the Auditore family name around town. AC2 immediately drops the player into a messy scrap because, like Ezio, you're not really supposed to know how to fight yet, which is in sync with Ezio's character. Unless you're an old school AC veteran like me, who already knows that melee counters are the answer to all of life's problems. After the fight, Ezio and his older brother Federico have a bit of playful banter about their respective night lives.
Besides, I've no money for this doctor of yours.
Wasted it on women and wine, huh?
I'd hardly call it wasted. Lend me some florins then. Or have you done the same?
Pickpocket the losers, visit a doctor to patch Ezio's lip up, then race to the rooftops to soak in the gorgeous landscape of Florence, which, real quick, is still breathtaking almost 15 years after release. There have been many Assassin's Creed since AC2, but AC2's Italy, as ancient as it is in console years, still gives even the modern ones a run for their money. Ezio then expresses his initial want.
It is a good life we lead, brother.
The best. May it never change.
And may it never change us.
Cue title card. Compare this to Horizon Zero Dawn's own title card moment, where it's Rost, not Aloy, who expresses his want.
And wherever you go, I will follow.
Rost holds to that want to the very end, when he returns to save Aloy from Hellas, but think about what that communicates for a moment. Rost is the driver of the naming ritual, and has a somewhat complete character arc throughout the opening sequence. Love, frustration, acceptance, letting go, heroic sacrifice. In a way, the opening sequence is Rost's story, not Aloy's, and that's a problem. Rost is also the one who expresses the most opinions.
Ignore him. We are outcasts, and he is of the tribe.
Maybe he doesn't like the tribe.
And he is a fool.
While Aloy mostly passively observes. A character without opinions is a character without character, and Aloy's pretty low on character. Her only real opinions are that she doesn't care much for Ad Grata, and she doesn't care much for how the Nora tribe treats her.
Oh, this is the bedhouse? With you standing guard? I figured it was the latrine.
You're very pregnant here.
Oh, that was way harsh, Ty.
She's trapped between an authored character who has their own agenda separate from the player, and an empty vessel for which the player is supposed to pour themselves into. Meanwhile, Ezio is practically bursting with opinions.
Afraid to handle things yourself? Your sister seemed quite satisfied with the handling I gave her earlier. Hey, lurido porco!
Keep up the good work.
Bischero.
After the title card, we continue Ezio's day in the life by paying a visit to one of his love interests and spending the night with her, only to be chased away by her father in the morning. After ditching the guards, Ezio makes his way back home where he's confronted by his father Giovanni, who then gives the first hint at Ezio's need, responsibility.
Do you think me blind and deaf, son? I know all about your fight with VIII de Pazzi last night, and then this little visit to Christina. Your behavior is unacceptable. It reminds me of myself when I was your age.
Ezio then runs several errands for his family, delivering letters for his father, grabbing bird feathers for his younger brother, beating up a man who besmirched his sister's good name, though it's worth pointing out that the guy really only did anything that Ezio would do himself, and following his mother to get some paintings from some local minor talent.
Hello, Leonardo.
Madonna Maria.
He's very talented.
Immagino.
All these missions, though seemingly boring on the surface, flesh out Ezio's relationship with his family and the politics at play in the story. While following Ezio's mom to Da Vinci's, she explains why Vieri de Pazzi has been slandering their name. Vieri's father is in jail, accused of murder by Ezio's father. There will be a trial, and Ezio's father is the one to present the evidence. Again, compare this to Horizon Zero Dawn's first several missions, where Ross trains Aloy how to survive in the wild. These missions are, well, just tutorials.
Oh?
We don't really get a much deeper sense of the connection between Aloy and Rost, and because they're purposefully separated from society, Aloy's unable to forge connections with anyone else.
Seal your lips!
Therefore, we aren't gaining any story beats or character insight, and are indeed just learning how to use health packs, distractions, and stealth. Yes, we get a couple scenes with Teb that shows how determined Aloy is to do the right thing, even when she gets no thanks for it.
Seal your lips!
But that's still not that much different from the actions that a player would already take. That's base level player 1 stuff, which holds true later when Aloy has grown up and can take her own damn side quests.
I don't see anyone else around to help.
Ezio, meanwhile, because he gets to interact with different people, gets to show different aspects of his character. Loving to his little brother, overly protective to his little sister, loving to his older brother, but also kind of postures a bit.
Bisquero.
Begrudgingly obedient to his mother.
You should find an outlet.
I have plenty of outlets.
I meant besides vaginas.
Mother.
And you can see that he really looks up to his dad. We're allowed to see the wide range of Ezio's character through the people he interacts with, while also learning the tutorials of how to climb, fight, hide, and carry boxes. Also, I forgot just how tactile the old Assassin's Creed games felt. You used to have to pay attention to the buildings in order to find handholds to climb with, compared to the modern games where you can climb anything, anywhere, and even jump from the top of the highest peaks without dying. The family tasks completed, Ezio returns to his father, who has a few more letters for him to deliver. This time to mercenaries, thieves, and prostitutes. Company Ezio's wealthy banker father is not known to keep, each with cryptic messages and warnings that Ezio doesn't understand.
Were you followed?
No. Why would I be followed?
Give me the package. Tell your father that they're moving tonight. He should as well.
Who's moving? What's going on here? Wait! Come back! Explain yourself!
Confused, Ezio returns home, only to find it's been ransacked by the local authorities, who have arrested his father and 2 brothers, and it's kinda heavily implied were less than unkind to his mother, who's now in a catatonic state. This game's from the late 2000s, so it's got, let's just say, sensitivity issues. Not quite as enlightened as the rest of us. Ezio evades detection from the guard searching the streets for him and, being the Renaissance Spider-Man that he is, climbs the prison walls to speak with his father.
Wait, you knew this would happen?
Not the way it did, and not this soon. Doesn't matter now.
What do you mean? Explain!
There's no time. Listen closely.
And instructs him to find the hidden room in his office, take everything from the chest inside, including his iconic assassin's robes that remain super cool to this day. I mean, look at that little cape flip go. Give the evidence against Vieri's father to the local magistrate, a friend of the auditories, who will clear their name in the morning. Though it's clear from his demeanor and the shadowy figure that's behind him that something's not quite right.
Oh, that man is sick!
Do you need a place to stay? You're more than welcome here.
Listen to the music! He's evil!
The morning after, Ezio arrives at the town square, expecting to see his family cleared of the crimes, only to witness his father and 2 brothers accused of treason and hung until dead, which immediately sparks Ezio's new desire.
I'll kill you for what you've done!
Ezio fights his way free, and after getting his hidden blade fixed by Da Vinci and learning a few tricks of the assassin's trade from the owner of the brothel, hunts down the magistrate and kills him in the middle of an art party, while making sure everyone knows who did the deed.
The Auditori are not dead! I'm still here! Me! Ezio! Ezio Auditore!
That man is sick!
This ties back into Ezio's need, displaying just how much he has left to learn before he's a cold-blooded master assassin acting for the greater good and not just himself. The magistrate also confesses that he did what he did out of fear that the Templars would harm his family. Now, notice how AC2, like Horizon Zero Dawn, also raises a lot of questions. Why is Vieri initially mad at the auditories? Why is Ezio delivering letters from his father to people outside his social circle? Why is Ezio's family imprisoned? Who's this guy behind the magistrate? Why did the magistrate betray then execute Ezio's family? But most of these questions are quickly answered because AC2 knows that it's not the questions that are important here. It's Ezio's character development. The overarching mysteries, like what's with these strange symbols on the sides of some buildings that lead to cryptic puzzles, are almost completely removed from Ezio's story and instead belong to Desmond's. Though they really don't go anywhere, and Ubisoft recently announced that they're just dropping the modern day story going forward, so... But it's actually smart writing, even if it was like kinda sorta by accident, because it allows Ezio to have a complete character arc in this game alone, completely separate from Desmond's bullshit. After assassinating the magistrate, Ezio doesn't know what to do next, except to get his family out of Florence and to their estranged Uncle Mario's house.
It's a me, Mario!
I forgot about that line. Still terrible. Ezio's lack of direction is underscored by how he reacts to his sister's questions.
How could this have happened to us?
I don't know.
Will we ever be back?
I don't know.
What will happen to our house?
I don't know.
On the path to Uncle Mario's, Ezio and his family are attacked by Vieri de Pazzi, determined to finish what the magistrate started. Again, for first-time players, this is supposed to be a messy brawl and not a systematic takedown by an AC egg-slunking alpha chad like myself. As first-time players still would not know how to fight properly yet, which Uncle Mario then sets to rectify. This would be the training montage that I referenced like an hour ago. As Uncle Mario, himself an assassin, teaches Ezio the intricacies of combat. But, like I said before, good training montages are not actually about the physical training, but the character development. And that holds true in AC2. During these missions, Uncle Mario tells Ezio about the nature of his father, an assassin at war with the Templars, a group that conspires to control the world from the shadows, which Ezio doesn't want to believe.
Your father was an assassin, Ezio. I told you before! My father was a paper pusher. All this talk of assassins and Templars, it reeks of fantasy.
Time passes between each of these combat training missions, and Ezio eventually comes to accept what Mario's telling him.
Yes, my father was an assassin. But why the need for such secrecy?
Though, when the training is done, Ezio decides that he's gonna leave to go to Spain and take his mom and sister. I was going to say child. He doesn't have a child yet. That's not till Revelations. Ezio does not want any part of the war between the Assassins and the Templars, even if he accepts that it's true now. This infuriates Uncle Mario.
You want to leave, Ezio? To throw away everything your father fought and died for? To deny your heritage? Fine! Come vuoi. Arrivederci e buona fortuna. Uncle, wait! Why is he so upset?
Again, there's that pesky need. When Ezio goes to say his final goodbye to Uncle Mario, he learns that Mario has left the villa to go take the fight to Vieri de Pazzi. Ezio decides to join.
What are you doing here? Taking responsibility.
During the assault, Ezio gets his revenge against Vieri, but he's as hot-blooded as ever.
Vorrei solo che avessi sofferto di più! Hai avuto la fine che meritavi! Spero che...
I mean, look at that. He's like screaming in the dude's face. That's not how a main protagonist acts, right? That's so naughty. Ezio's awesome. Uncle Mario chastises Ezio, telling him that an assassin must pay respect to the dead, even if it was their enemy. This once again shows that Ezio may now know how to kill, but that doesn't make him an assassin. He still has a need. Ezio, now fully aware that running to Spain won't protect his family or solve his problems because he understands the far reach that the Templars have, decides that he's going to remain in Italy, learn to become an assassin, and cross off every name on his hit list. Which also provides the spine of the story, which the player can always check in on. Are there still names on Ezio's hit list? Story's not done. With that, the opening sequence of Assassin's Creed 2 is over, and I, fully drawn into Ezio's character and story, am eager to continue playing. You don't even know. You don't even know. Alright, get out of here, you dummy. Now, I'm sure someone in the comments is going to write a detailed breakdown of how you can't compare the narrative of Assassin's Creed 2 to Horizon Zero Dawn, that of course we spend more time with Ezio's family because Aloy doesn't have one. That's the whole point, dummy. Or they'll provide canonical answers to all of my story-related questions using text and audio logs and NPC conversations to prove that I'm wrong, that I'm an idiot, and I should be ridden out of YouTube on a rail. But keep in mind, I'm not actually asking if these questions about wants and needs and desires and day in the lives and normal worlds and personal journeys of transformation have answers. I know they have answers, and to be honest,
I don't care.
Horizon Zero Dawn bends over backwards to provide answers to any little question that the player might have. However, all these little questions I'm asking are meant to add up to one big question, which is this the most dramatic and effective way that the story can be conveyed in this moment? That's what I'm asking. And you know what? By opening with a disposable scene, by making child Aloy's life so cartoonishly unfair before we even get to know her, by frequently undermining its own rules, by making Aloy a champion while I'm still a challenger, by giving her a strong want but leaving her completely devoid of a need, and by trying to replace that need with lore? For Horizon Zero Dawn, the answer to that question, the big one, it's
no.
But for Assassin's Creed 2, which takes time to flesh out Ezio's normal world before turning it all upside down, which gives Ezio a need equally as strong as his want, which understands that mystery and lore should always take a backseat to character development, the answer to the big question for Assassin's Creed 2 is
yes.
I don't mean to be this hard on Horizon Zero Dawn. After all, Sony took a chance on a new IP, which is really a minor miracle in this day and age of perpetual nostalgia bait. And it paid off. The game sold millions. John Gonzalez and his team clearly care about Aloy and the world she inhabits. And you know, I think they did an okay job. I'm hard on Horizon Zero Dawn because I love video games and I love storytelling. And I want both to be the best they possibly can be. And that's not gonna happen without us taking the time to analyze what works and what doesn't in a game. But you know, hey, maybe Guerrilla Games will get it right next time when they release Horizon 3 the same week as Elder Scrolls 6.
Seal your lips!
Thank you for watching.
Bisquero.